Again, my name is Abby Sherlock, and I am one of your co hosts here for Area of Effect. And this is our final panel of the day with Corsair and Friends. Reminder that we are still taking donations for our cause, Gamers Outreach, which by donating, you can enter to win some of the great prizes that Corsair has provided for AoE. Some we're raffling off at the end of the day are the Corsair K100 RGB optical mechanical gaming keyboard and a Vengeance RGB Pro 16 GB gigabyte memory kit. That's awesome. We have many other prizes from Corsair being raffled off tomorrow, though, so be sure to check out our link on Tiltify to enter. Our guests today come from a wide range of backgrounds from Corsair and multiple places within esports. So let's level up and get this thing started. I'm going to ask each of you if you could introduce yourselves and what you do with Corsair or in esports. David.
Hi everyone, my name is David. I am the esports project coordinator over at Corsair. So my day-to-day is I actually get to work with the lovely friends that we have on board with Shay and with John. A lot of the stuff that I do is a lot of team day-to-day operations, whether it's equipment, gear, content ideas, as well as kind of product feedback. R&D is probably one of the areas that we strive to improve most, and especially with the help of our teams, it really kind of helps drive Corsair forward.
Very cool. Shay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shay Butler. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at NV Gaming. Coming up on 4 years with NV. I started my career in traditional sports with the Dallas Stars. Spent 8 years there, did ticket sales, premium sales, and left after 4 years of being the Director of Corporate Partnerships with the Dallas Stars. Um, Hopped into esports, worn a lot of hats here, but these days I'm most responsible for sponsorship revenue and sponsorship sales.
And Frank.
My name's Frank Fields. I run all of esports sponsorship and student programs here at Corsair. My background was originally as a pro player and then as a journalist and content creator, and then eventually an operations manager in the StarCraft scene, Warcraft 3 scenes, and then later League of Legends scenes.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And John, we have John coming to us from multiple time zones away, correct?
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Thank you, Abby. My name is John Yao. I'm the CEO of Team Secret. As a CEO, it's kind of you wear almost every hat there is in the organization, but most of all, you're responsible for the business and brand growth of the organization worldwide. Before I came into esports a couple of years ago, I did about over a decade of strategy consulting. So a lot of consulting and advice giving to other companies, and now I'm able to do it within esports. So I'm very happy about that. I'm very excited because I also have a high affinity for gaming myself.
We love to see it. So, getting started with our questions, a really interesting one. What do you look for in a partner, meaning a partner you're going to collaborate with, from both the peripheral and then the team perspective? David.
This is, like you had prefaced, a pretty deep uh,
Yeah.
kind of thing, especially from both ends. On Corsair's end, we really look for something that's building a partnership that's genuine and something that we can grow over time. So the biggest thing with that is when we look for teams, they actually have to like our products to begin with. If it's not genuine from that standpoint, then it becomes really difficult for the partnership to really grow value. So that's, I think number one is just being genuine that the products really resonate with the players.
Hmm. Important to know. Shay.
Yeah.
Um, it's a good question. We look for partners that want to take things beyond just the boxes we need to check in a contract.
Yeah.
And I've heard Frank say that to me before because obviously Corsair is one of our great partners. Especially in a world of COVID, lots of pivots and adjustments have had to be made, and so it's always nice when a partnership feels like it's more than just a contract and it's more than just deliverables. It's truly a friendship. Like I think of Frank and David and their team as really good friends of mine, and I see Corsair as a friend of Envy as an organization.
Yeah.
And obviously, in the peripherals category specifically, we want to be the best in the world, and we need the best products in the world, and Corsair is definitely delivering on that.
Very cool. Frank?
Yeah, I would say that it's all about making sure that you're fulfilling needs. Like Shay mentioned, we want to enable the players to have success. So uh, pro teams are actually a huge part of our R&D, and we want to make sure that our products are going to fulfill their needs. On the flip side of that is once we have done so, we want to make sure that we can get the word out about how our products are enabling team success and that they can enable the everyday player's success. So I look for partners that can really kind of help tell the story that our products are very good, that they can use them to win, that they can help other people to win. And especially around product launches, that's the biggest opportunity for us to really do some creative things together. Aside from that, we just always want to make sure that we're doing as authentic marketing as possible, reducing all the hashtag ad and hashtag sponsored type content, and just having people see Team Envy, Team Secret, they're using our products. They've been using our products for years at this point, and they like them. And as long as they keep doing that, that tells enough of a story by itself. We don't really need to do that much more.
Yeah. John?
Well, it's really hard going last because you guys just give away all the answers. I think just to echo and maybe add on a little bit to what has been said is when we look at partnerships, we first ask our players because the authenticity part is extremely important. It may be the most critical part of it. I think when you have professional players using gear for winning tournaments and for furthering their careers, it's important that they authentically like stand behind that gear, right? It's really hard for them to, and they're not actors, right? They're professional gamers. It's really hard for them to come off as authentic if they don't really believe in a product. So that's one of the first things that we check when we um, first talked about partnering with Corsair is like, hey, how do you guys like the gear? And most of them were using Corsair already, so it was something that was very very natural. And then going to the second point, which is the idea around trust in a partnership, and I think Shay mentioned this a little bit earlier, which is there are so many things that happen within esports that are not necessarily planned, that
Yeah.
you can't really distill everything or plan for everything in a contract itself, right? So at the beginning of the year, or a beginning of a multi-year partnership, you plan for a contract, you write everything down that you want to do, that you can plan for, that these products are launching, or we want to do this type of campaign. There is some of that, but then there is also a not so insignificant bucket of things that you need to do, or things that you need to have within your mind that is going to be completely unplanned, right? Things come up, opportunities come up, that you just need to react to, and that's where the trust comes in, and having a trusted partner to say, hey, this new opportunity came out, or the industry is reacting this way, and we need to pivot very quickly, regardless of what's actually written down on paper. So that trust aspect is really important to us, and what makes the partnership so successful.
Cool. Now, this is a question from people who might be interested in going into partnerships themselves that they might, have no idea about. How does one negotiate a partnership? The steps of that process, John.
I think going into a potential negotiation situation, you have to kind of have an understanding of what services you're providing and how those services looked upon within the market overall, right? Because I think everything is kind of relative. So it's the pricing and everything is determined by the market, as well as what are the expectations on both sides of the fence. And so if you have a good idea of what those expectations are, both for the esports teams as well as for the brand partners, then you can go in with at least a certain set of ideas and a certain under common understanding of where you may end up, and then it's just saying like, hey, this is what we want to do. These are our ideas for how we think that we can best represent your brand and how we think we can take the marketing activities further. And then you kind of listen to what the brand partner wants to do and see if there's any middle ground and go from there.
Cool. Frank.
Yeah, the flip side of what John is saying, usually we're just kind of looking to explain what our objectives are with our potential partners and saying, this is what we generally like to do in the space. This is what's important to us. This is kind of our list of asks and deliverables. Reconcile that based on what the organization's capabilities are. For instance, content is really important. Not every single team is capable of creating the same kind of content or creating content the same way. And so understanding, what is the organization actually capable of doing in order to meet these goals? Sometimes you pivot to things a little bit differently and you just kind of balance the competing interests with the resources that are available. And then if you decide that it's a good fit, like John says, there is kind of an industry standard for certain assets within the space. There's also certain, from the team side, certain revenue, levels that you need to hit. And from the brand side, there's certain budgets that you have to allocate. And so you're trying to really, reconcile those two competing interests. I will say, both with Shay and with John over the years as we've gotten to this, and I've talked to John about this. We kind of have like an internal number we go into with the budgeting process, and I always reach out and time to renew and say, so what are you guys thinking? And almost every time, and in some cases, within a few $1,000s of difference, when we're talking about six-figure contracts, we're on the same page about what the valuation of a contract is. So it just goes to show that as long as you're understanding each other and you have a level of trust, you can get things done that aren't going to cause too much friction either way.
I'll use one of the MBA's favorite terms, synergy. So that's synergy happening there.
Yeah.
Shay.
I echo everything John and Frank said. I would add, I guess, it starts with so in my chair, I'm on the selling side. Frank and David are on the buying side. And my approach to sponsorship and partnerships is always um, the client comes first, and so you start with their objectives and you see how well you can measure up in meeting those objectives and coming up with content and ideas that hit those goals. I'm a big believer in partnerships should be just that. Like, you should find win-wins. Both parties are getting something out of the deal, right? And from Frank and David's perspective at Corsair, they're getting endorsements from our players, and they're getting R&D feedback, and they're getting marketing and advertising and social and video content. Envy is getting sponsorship dollars, support, tech support, and product support. And so it is truly a win-win situation, with Corsair and our other partners. And if there's just that level of trust, the rest will usually take care of itself.
Yeah. David.
I think to really expand on what everyone else saying, I believe with now there's just the standards are all there. Everyone knows from both sides what the deliverables are or what's just minimum expectation. So on both sides, really the synergy that you had mentioned before, coming together and trying to think outside the box and trying to come up with something that really creates value. Because from the buying side, that's so difficult. Like, you're taking a look at a year in advance and you're trying to say, well, these are our goals that we have going forward, but what opportunities, where can we really interject? And I think the last part is just like what games organizations are in, because that matters as well as the
Yeah.
part of where the direction for these campaigns really go.
Makes a lot of sense. So again, going back to people who might be interested into someday working with y'all, what are the most important skills that one needs to build in order to work successfully within your role? And I know we have a diversity of different roles here, so you can speak to that specifics there. David.
I think for myself, one thing is attention to detail. Being really attentive on what you're asking and how you're delivering that ask to the partners. So, it makes it very clear that we're both kind of set on this one idea, or this is the direction we're thinking, and being able to follow up. So having that attention to detail really carries a long way, because the communication aspect on the partner side and from the sponsor side, it's just like it's night and day. And
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that, with Shay's team and with John's team, like there's anytime we have an ask or they have an ask, we do our best to really get those lines of communication really clear.
That makes a lot of sense, Shay.
Yeah.
High moral character for sure. Again, you've
Ooh.
gotta be looking out for your partners at all times.
100% agree.
Yeah. The ability to put others first, and that's internally and externally. The best sponsorship salespeople that I've ever met are ones that just are great relationship builders.
Yeah.
And that's not just with clients and partners, but it's got to be internal stakeholders too, right? When Frank and David wanna pull off some awesome social campaign, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces and people that are involved here internally. Like I've got to be able to have good interpersonal skills to rally those troops and herd those cats in the direction that we need them to be herded. And then lastly, it's probably just about getting out there and doing it. Like practice makes perfect in sales. And it's, whether people realize it or not, in any job you will ever have, you will always be selling something, whether it's an internal idea or it's a new social post campaign concept, or it's a merchandise, or apparel item. Like you're always selling something. So the best way to learn sales is just to go do it.
Frank.
Yeah, just a slight tangent. Shay is correct. What I'm selling often is selling my own sponsorship program internally to key stakeholders within the company in order to get more resources. So even though I am in the habit of buying, so to speak, forming partnerships with teams, there's still a lot of internal marketing they do. But more to the point of the question, empathy is 100% the top attribute that I look for in everyone that I hire,
Yeah.
in everyone that I work with. I don't really need people to sell me. And in the case of John and Shay, I don't really need them to sell me. I understand what their organizations are capable of. I understand the direction that they're going. What was most important is making sure, like John said for the last question, there's just inherent trust that will resolve the things that might go wrong somewhere during the partnership. And for the team, internal teams, it's just important that we can trust each other and that we work well together. And you do that by having empathy for your coworkers and empathy for your peers.
Yeah. John.
When when Frank and I talk about contracts, it's like 15 minutes a year, maybe
Yep.
20.
He's not exaggerating. It really is.
So it's really good. I think I'll add one to the list that the rest of the gang has come up with, which is adaptability and thinking outside the box, especially in esports. I think one of the things that I noticed when first coming into this industry a couple years ago was that a lot of the justification for why you would do something would be like, well, this is how it's done, right? This is how it's always done. There's a set process. Um, but within esports, a lot of the innovation actually comes from asking the question of, well, why is it this way?
Yeah.
Because esports is such a new industry and there's so much innovation and it's very fast paced. You often find that by asking that question and being adaptable, you figure out new and better ways to do things. And one of the examples I'll highlight is that when the pandemic first broke out, maybe not when it first broke out, but a couple months in, it was really difficult to do things like content on location or doing photo shoots or video shoots that we would be very used to doing. Because a lot of us were in lockdown situation, or it was just not very safe to get everybody together to do those types of things. And we were thinking, well, we work in a very digital industry.
Yeah.
So why don't we get our creative team together? Why don't we get our artists together and actually do the content that we wanted to do, but draw it out, like do it digitally. And so these are the ideas that come out when you're faced with these types of situations. And thinking outside the box, oftentimes you can figure out something that is maybe even better or an option that you would explore in the future, even if there was no challenge that you're facing.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, a follow up question for those in the audience who are interested: how does one build up those important skills when they don't have a product or a team? John.
I tend to think about skills not specific to products or teams, and I think it's important because these types of skills, if you think about it more generically, they become universal skills. So it's regardless of whether you're doing it for work or you're making decisions for your personal life. These types of skills that you would build up, if you look at it more from a generic lens, you can apply it to almost any situation, right? Like adaptability, and thinking on your feet and thinking outside the box. You can apply it to almost anything that you do. It doesn't need to be related to a product or a team. You can work in a service industry. You can work, or you can even not apply it to your professional life. You can apply it to your personal life. I think if you look at it that way, you'll be able to find universal themes that then you can apply to whatever job you're doing.
Makes a lot of sense. Frank.
Yeah, one of the career-changing books that I read, it's a book called Creativity Incorporated by Ed
Ah,
Catmull,
yeah.
who ran Pixar.
So
And
good.
even though that was a book where the skill set was applied to creativity in a studio, I find the lessons in that book have been so important to building personal skills that I can use not only in my professional life, but in my personal life. And just always focusing on self improvement, no matter what the specific attribute or type of thing I'm going into improving. So I would say the direct answer to the question is, how do you improve your skills? Like, you just have to make an effort to do anything, really. If you want to get better at, if you will get better at project management by just, you can do that by managing projects, but you can also do that by making content because you will organize yourself better. But it's just all about just really focusing on improvement over time. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
So I will sometimes put skills in two buckets: hard skills and soft skills. And so, with hard skills, I'm a big fan of audiobooks and books in general that are focused on the subject matter you're trying to learn. So, Frank, I just wrote down Creativity Incorporated. Haven't read it yet. It's been on the
Ah,
list, and you reminded me that I need to pick it up. On the soft skills side, the best way I've learned to, work well with others, leadership skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills, is through finding great mentors. So if you recognize someone that you work with or work for, stay in touch, that are great at the soft skills side of your business, stay in touch with them, keep in touch with them, reach out to them regularly, and just learn as much as you can. Um, I've learned a lot from a couple of my mentors.
that sounds all valid. Also, Creativity Inc. I give a retweet also.
Yeah,
David.
2 stars.
Well, I'm kind of living proof of what everyone has said. Um, from my background being in the tech world and then knowing nothing about, just being a fan of esports and kind of coming into it, it's kind of what Frank had mentioned. Going out, doing it, taking that chance, learning from your mentors. Luckily, I can call everyone, between Frank, Shay, and John, like they're all mentors to myself. I
Mhm.
look up to them, and going back to what I had previously said about attention to detail, like by doing it, by paying attention, by not being scared to make mistakes. And Frank always had said this to me early on. You can make mistakes. That's okay. Just don't make cost decisions, issues that will affect the company. So luckily, that's like one of those things where I took to heart, where I think everyone in general growing up, you don't make, like, everyone fears making mistakes, but you actually learn a lot from making mistakes and kind of learning. It's what you take out of those experiences is really kind of how it helps you blossom all the other skills. So being mindful of that is very big. And I think just being open to trying different things and not being scared to go after it.
I add a little bit to that. Like, that really is my philosophy in the team, is just a mistake is an opportunity to learn. And I would encourage you to take calculated risks, even if you think or know that mistakes will happen, because you will learn so much from those failures, and it will be worth as long as it's not catastrophic, the minor damage that you cause to your product or your company will be worth it from what your teams learn from that experience.
That was something very funnily enough that game producers brought up earlier today, where again, we want you to make mistakes, but don't make them again. Because hopefully you've learned from them. So you're just two different corners of the industry saying the same thing. So interesting that Frank brought that up because this is our next question. What's a campaign you've worked on that you've learned the most from? David.
So for me, I would actually say the Champion Series line campaign that we recently did that launched back in April. This was really big because for the first time, Corsair was essentially announcing products specifically targeted towards the esports audience. So working with our teams on a different level, like how do we send this message? How do we really showcase these products in the light that they should be shown? And even going back before that, leading up to that, this was just like this was not just 1 year. This is a couple of years of planning because I had the opportunity to go to NVHQ, hang out with Shay and the teams and showcase, the Saber wireless mouse that's out now. That was essentially a product that was researched and developed based upon team feedback. And that was very important to us. And I think we learned a lot about that process on our end of just how a product comes about, but then also how to properly incorporate our teams to make products that, that they enjoy.
Yeah. Shay,
A campaign that I've worked on
that
that I
you've
really
learned. Yeah.
hmm.
Mm.
Um, the Dallas Fuel is our Overwatch League team,
Yes.
and we claim that we hosted the first ever home game in esports. This is from when was this, Frank? 2018, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
We sold out a fuel match that had 5,000 people in the crowd, and it was up there with one of the best live events I've ever been to. And it was truly all hands on deck from ticket sales, marketing, signage, sponsorship, production. Like it was a full production, and that's one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. And
You're talking to
Corsair
the
was
former host of the Vancouver Titans. I was trying
oh
to think the
awesome.
memory bank of the home game because that makes a lot of sense. And that was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a lot of fun.
And Frank.
Since my background was as a player, content creator, operations, most of my career I'd never launched a physical product until I got to Corsair. And Corsair launches about 100 products a year. So honestly, not necessarily one specific campaign, but the act of launching physical products and everything that goes into that was mind blowing to me. And it still is in a lot of ways as we start getting into new categories and not launching new products. We just launched a monitor this week for the first time. And every single time you just learn so many new internal processes, the hardware itself, understanding what goes into sourcing all of that, and then the different kinds of partnerships and marketing you need to do to cultivate the launch, and all of the hard mistakes and learnings that go along with it are just making me better in so many ways. And so every new product launch I'm able to do at Corsair is just a new lesson that I can take with me. So I've really enjoyed that.
John.
I love this question because I think if you approach different projects with the mindset that you can learn from everything, I think you're going to get a lot out of doing any number of campaigns, because you do a number of campaigns, you do like 50 campaigns. On the 50th one, you still get to learn a lot of different things. And I'll give you an example, which is the campaign that we're currently working on with for the Saber Wireless Pro, as well as the HS80 headset. Frank and David, you guys haven't even seen this yet because we shot it yesterday. But what I took away from this is actually I've worked with my players for a long time. We worked with Corsair for a long time, so we're familiar with the branding, the guidelines, the products, as well as the players. But I actually learned a ton yesterday about our players themselves, because when we're looking at the campaign brief and the ideas around it, there were a lot lot of good guidelines, but there wasn't like a specific script. And so when we approached putting together some of the materials and some of the shoots for this campaign, we're kind of like, okay, let's just freestyle. What do you think about this product? How do you feel about using this? How do you feel about the look and feel, all that stuff? And when we did that, some of the learnings that I got out of it was more in-depth understanding of how our players are. Some of them that seem super serious are actually quite funny when you kind of let them loose and let them do their own creative thing. And then some of them that are kind of joking around all the time actually come off quite well when they're talking about serious things like features and all that stuff. So I can't wait for you guys to see it. But it was definitely a pretty interesting learning moment for me yesterday.
It's awesome.
Cool. Y'all are getting sneak information here. What does your day to day look like within your role? And this is going to get a wide variety of answers because y'all have different roles. So, John.
I think I'm going to break it down into three different things. The first third of it, I guess, is just firefighting. Right? It's purely tactical. It's like, what's going on today? Are there anything that pops up that's of concern? Usually, there always is. And then there's like what's going on in social media. What are the trends today? How are the teams doing? Are we in tournament? Like these are the very tactical things that you kind of just have to get through to move the organization forward on a day-to-day basis. The other part of it, the second thing would be more strategic. So these are whether thinking myself individually or having meetings within the organization with some of my other staff members would be to talk about how are we going to move forward, right? Some of the strategic planning, what games are we going to get into? What teams are we going to look at? What players are we going to look at? How we're looking at marketing? How are we looking at different regions in the world in terms of mapping out our brand growth? These are some of the more strategic conversations that we have, and we need to have them quite frequently in order to steer the ship, if you will. And then the third part would be more mentorship. So we actually spent a lot of time discussing not just how you're doing your job and what the job is all about, but also the goals, the development opportunities, and how the staff at Secret want to progress in their careers. What do they want to learn? What mistakes do they want to make? We always say within our company that it's a safe place to make mistakes. So it's much better to actually have ideas and go pursue them and test them out and take these types of risks and potentially make these mistakes than to not have ideas or have ideas but then not pursue them. So these are the types of conversations that we have when it comes to mentoring, and we spend quite amount of time on it.
Yeah, Frank.
I'm just laughing because I honestly break things down almost the exact same way that John does for my day to day. It's a lot of, is there an emergency that I need to take care of? But I in terms of, for me, I think about it like making sure that my team has all the resources that they need to solve the problems, and if they need guidance or mentorship or advice on how to do that, making sure I'm available to them, that they use me as a resource. And then making sure that I'm able to get the resources that they need if they're unable to do it themselves. So kind of firefighting / the tactical thinking, and then strategically, like John was saying, for us, it's like, what are the trends? Are there any new games coming that we need to be looking to? What is the streaming industry looking like now? Are there any changes that I need to be aware of? Is there anything that I need to brief for me, like my manager or executive team, about shifts in the marketplace that will impact our greater company? And so that's kind of how my strategic outlook looks like. And then, I just want to make sure that my team feels fulfilled in their roles, that they have some career progression, to look to, that they feel supported, that they feel that they can always come to me for feedback, including about me. I always want people to give me feedback. One of the most helpful piece of feedback I got was from one of my former direct reports, Alex, where he noticed in meetings I kept looking at my laptop and I seemed like I was disengaged from the conversation. And he just told me this in one of our one-on-ones. So from then on and to this day, if ever I'm in a meeting, I make sure my laptop is shut unless I specifically need to look at something. And it just comes off as being a lot more respectful. So just making sure that that kind of feedback, feed forward process is the last component for me.
My day to day will vary by the quarter that we're in. So, in Q4, there's a lot of companies that are in their fiscal budget planning season, and so a lot of my Q4 day to day is taken up with having conversations with our existing partners or um, hoping to have final conversations with potential new partners. Um, I love esports because even though we're almost at 100 employees at Envy, it still feels very small and it feels kind of like a startup where people have to be kind of all hands on deck sometimes, but that leads to lots of meetings. And so a lot of my day is also just taken up with strategy and overall planning for new assets we're creating or new events we want to go be a part of, new opportunities and ideas that we might want to bring to current or new partners. And then when you get to like Q2, Q3, where it's really like in the stages of execution, it's just helping to lead the team as best as I can to make sure that we're over delivering on a week to week, day to day basis for all of our partners. Um, and then, lastly, but probably most importantly, is just managing my team. We have a wonderful sales group and activation team, and people come first at Envy, and so kind of towards the vein of mentorship, like John was saying, I try to spend as much time as I can, just really making sure that our team feels like they're part of something special and feels like they enjoy what they do and can find good work-life balance.
Yeah, David.
So I think basically what Shay was saying, where really depends on the time and season of where we're at, because I feel like I've learned and picked up multiple hats in my position, which is great. I just have felt like the exposure to doing what I do, working with teams on activations, coming up with content ideas, um, checking in where products are and how to think about how we activate on product launches. I think that's one of the areas where it's kind of given, it always shifts. So being able, I think it's like esports, right? Like there is no set standard of what this is, and it's always ongoing and growing. And so being able to put on any of those hats at any given time, whether putting out fires, making sure product gets sent, seeing how we can maximize activations, I think the biggest thing was also always kind of seeing where teams are in terms of their performance, and trying to highlight that, to internally as well as externally. So really trying to share our teams and really build that brand synergy on both ends. I think that's one of the biggest things with Envy's Valorant squad recently at Masters. Like that was, we were very proud on our end of just kind of seeing how far that team was able to go from being a third seed NA going all the way to the finals. Like it's very hopeful. So.
Cool. So this is an interesting question that I think people might not know or understand, especially since esports is more of a newer industry. But what differs across esports marketing, esports brand, and esports partnerships? Like, what are kind of the differences of what those words mean? David.
Oh God,
I
we
know.
could. This is where we could spend plenty of time on this topic. If I can kind of put it simply, I think it's realistically not trying to over exaggerate each terms, because I feel like in many ways they kind of blend in and kind of piggyback off each other. So the branding side of it is where I think Frank and I really focus on in terms of esports branding, because for us it's how do we deliver this message, not to the whole world internally as well as how do our teams really showcase this. So there's so many different ways how you approach it, but I think it's simplifying what kind of esports is. You know that it's essentially anything electronical where people are playing competitively. Marketing, branding, and partnerships, they're all just different categories of this underlying umbrella. So
Yeah. Shay.
Um, they're all intertwined, I think. One of the things that Envy is focused on a lot right now is finding partners or continuing to have partners and sponsors that reflect the brand identity that we want Envy to be about. Sorry about the drag race behind me, if you can hear that.
Oh,
And so right now, Envy has historically been all about winning. Like winning is number one. That is who we are. That is what we want to be about. And I think in the last 12 months we've been also about um, being an aspirational brand and a lifestyle brand, and helping people that interact with us on a day to day feel like they're interacting with something that's super high quality. And so we want partners and sponsors that reflect those same qualities. So they are different, but I think they're also very intertwined.
yeah. Frank.
Yeah, for me, this is right now, I have to juggle all three of these hats. This is all my job. For the marketing side, I am marketing products to the esports and gaming audience, partnerships. I just want to make sure that we're enabling our teams to have success and are keeping us relevant in the places that we need to be. And then brand, it's really just making sure that Corsair is presented as a uh, premium brand in the industry. And so like they're all kind of related, and at least in my role, you can't really do one of them without the other ones. Partnerships are a vehicle to take care of the other two needs, but none of them really work without each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everybody that commented on this pretty much. It's all very, very much intertwined. The way that I look at it, it's your brand is your identity and how you want to be perceived. The marketing aspect is how do you deliver that perception to the right audiences. Then partnerships is who do you want to work with to deliver that perception and to further that perception and that identity. So to me, it's all very interconnected, and it's all about working with the right folks to further that message.
So, a big question, which I think is good for people to know if they aren't in esports, maybe games or not even video games at all. What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about esports marketing or esports partnership compared to other industries? So they might know about sports, normal sports, they might know about other stuff, but how is that different in esports? John.
Um, I don't know how it's necessarily different from other sports, but I will talk about a big misconception that is highlighted in my head, which is I feel like a lot of people think that marketing and partnerships hinges on like one tournament wins, right? Of course, winning culture is really important, but it's certainly not like, oh, if I win this tournament, I'm going to get all these sponsorships, or if I lose this one tournament, I'm going to lose all my sponsorships. I think it's more around creating winning culture, but also telling a good story around it. How you came to either win or lose a tournament, the journey, overcoming challenges, and telling an authentic story around that rather than the actual result. Because there's a lot of different storylines that can come out of winning, but there's also a lot of storylines that can come out of not necessarily winning every single tournament. So I think to have impactful marketing, it's more about telling the story as opposed to every single result.
Frank.
Yeah, just to give a case in point for what John is saying and tooting Shay's horn, they did some awesome comms content from Valorant Masters where you really got to see the personality of the team and them going crazy, and it Like, as long as we get to see that, it doesn't really matter that much that they finished second and didn't win the tournament. It's just cool to see that come out, and that's important. For me, the biggest misconception is that there is this reputation, maybe a little bit in traditional corporate Western culture, but in esports, that everyone's like a cutthroat businessman is trying to squeeze every last dollar out of a deal. And in my experience, that is true of some people, but I would find the vast majority of people, and definitely the most successful ones, are not like that. And that kind of attitude is actually extremely harmful and destructive in the long term, where people just won't want to work with you if that's consistently your mindset. And like we were talking about before, that, empathy and understanding is important. The cutthroat sales business person is largely not true in my experience.
Okay.
Um, so stick with me. I promise I will answer the question. But
Okay.
one of the hardest things about getting into sports or esports is just getting your foot in the door, getting your first crack, your first shot to like really prove yourself and get that logo on your resume. And I was able to get my foot in the door through sales and through begging an alumni that went to the same school I did, which was Northern Arizona University, um, and especially in traditional sports, and I think the same is going to quickly be true in esports. Is one of the best ways to get your foot in the door is through sales, and I think one of the big misconceptions about sales is that you have to be this like crazy extrovert that can cold call anybody and will walk in a room and dazzle everybody that's there, and like I don't think that's true at all. Um, I think that the best salespeople I know are sometimes very introverted and also just very good listeners. And they're very good at putting others first. Like Frank has used the word empathy a few times today, and I think that is maybe the most important part of being a good salesperson. And I think another misconception about sales is that it's like um, cutthroat, like Frank said. Like it shouldn't be that way. The best partnership salespeople that I've ever met are just really good at finding win-win opportunities and really good at listening to someone's objectives and trying to figure out how they can meet those objectives. So if you're wanting to get your foot in the door in sports or esports, I highly encourage you to at least consider some kind of sales role because um, it John can probably attest it's hard to find great salespeople, and when you do, they easily pay them for themselves 10 times over. So they're executives like John are probably always looking to hire more salespeople.
Yeah, David.
I think kind of going based off what everyone else was saying is from the big misconception that if you are the best team in the world, that makes you top candidate to be the number one pick for any company. And that's certainly not true because it
Yeah.
goes back to, you know, brand guidelines, how well this team kind of represents themselves. So just because you are essentially the best does not make you the hot commodity that everyone wants to go after.
Makes sense. So we've reached actually the audience question portion of our panel. Any of you can jump in. I'm not going to direct them. It's just who best sees fit that they know the answer. This is an interesting one, but David mentioned that mistakes aren't necessarily a bad thing if you learn from them. What's a mistake you've made that you're comfortable sharing that you're thankful for now because it's given you real significant growth within your role?
I guess to look back on my experience, a mistake that I've made, um, God, it's difficult to say because I felt like what I mentioned about attention to detail is very big, but I think sometimes, working too fast, that is one issue I had early on. It was just like I felt the pressure of trying to complete things and meeting my own, I set the expectation for myself really high. So by doing that, errors are going to creep in. And Frank says this all the time. There'll always be work. There'll always be something that needs to be done. So taking your time and doing it correctly, and kind of, taking the time to proofread, go through, double check. I think that's something that sometimes gets lost when you feel overwhelmed by a bunch of stuff. So
Um, Another question. Someone mentioned that they're always frequently selling internally. What are all the things you all consider when selling to folks in your own company? How often does that happen?
Every week. So David knows we have now a process where any single time, and this is just kind of, this is actually like internal advertising in a way. Anytime our team is doing anything relevant on a global scale that we can brag about, we just send an email to all our executives that said, hey, look at what our teams are doing. This is how many people were watching them. This is how awesome they are. And most of the time there will not be a reply, but every once in a while, they'll like join in and say, that's awesome. That's so great. And the reason you have to do this is because for an executive that has so many different areas of the business, they're thinking about like global supply chain and logistics. So them thinking about like, oh, well, this esports team did well at a tournament, that's not on their radar that much. But I need to make sure that that's on the radar so that my program can be positioned well in the company so that I can keep driving value to the company because I know esports marketing and sponsorships marketing works. And if not for that, and there have been occasions where I just didn't necessarily sell our successes internally well enough, and then I have to later have a battle to explain what the value of a certain proposition is, and it takes a little bit longer when they haven't been reinforced with that all the time along the way. And it can just save a lot of time later if, while things are in the moment, I can point that out and say, this is what we paid for, and this is part of what we were getting for that as a reminder.
Their
Yeah, just to
perspective.
chime in on that, that's
Yeah.
it's absolutely correct. Selling internal, I mean, I think people sometimes don't want to toot their own horn, so to speak. But I don't really look at it that way. I look at it more as providing visibility. You shouldn't take credit for accomplishments that are not your own, or you shouldn't take credit for things that you shouldn't take credit for. But if there is something that you feel like you did really well, or that your team did really well, and there is an accomplishment, you should absolutely take credit for it, because there's no other way. Like for me, there's no other way for me to get the visibility, because there's just like a million things that I have to do, and so having that visibility is really great, because one, it reminds me that I should note something good that happened within our own team and to our own organization. So people need to people that deserve praise actually get praise and rewards and all that. But also, like when I'm thinking about long-term planning, and when I'm thinking about like people development and things like that, these are the things that I can keep in the back of my head when I think about how I need to plan for these things. So I don't know unless somebody tells me.
This is really cool hearing from both sides, which I don't think most people do. So, our final question before moving on to shout outs was I think really interesting and it's very logistical. How does one measure your return on investment from an activation with a partner?
Gosh. Um, if I'm going to be totally honest, no one has a 100% certain complete answer to that. And if you do, you should sell it and you'll be the richest person on earth. There's no 100% effective way to measure marketing. We have ideas and metrics we use to understand the impact. But when you're talking about things on such a macro level, there's so many different aspects. So we can say we have a campaign coming that involves both of these teams. And one KPI of this is going to be, well, how many people saw this campaign? How many people went out and purchased products? How many people were left with a positive impression of Corsair? How many people now know that Envy and Secret and Corsair work together, and is that a positive thing in their mind? And then later, how many of those people are eventual Corsair customers because of that? And you can get answers to some of those questions, but you can't get answers to all of those questions, and all of those things matter. So, in some ways, you just kind of use the metrics that you can. A lot of ways, it's going to be qualitative analysis and just understanding the sentiment of this campaign compared to others you have run, others that other companies have run, and just kind of comparing the successes against each other. But in my opinion, there isn't really ever a perfect way that you can judge ROI in a specific activation. You can get close, but the world is how it is.
Very, very interesting and educational. So, with that, we have reached the end of our esports marketing with Corsair and Friends panel. Before we leave, I would love if each of you could, shout out to where people can find you on the interwebs or whatever else you would like to say before we end. David.
First, I'd just like to thank everyone that's a part of this panel and having us on, and everyone watching, friends, family. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Tusiq, 2SIQQ.
Awesome. Shay.
Thank you, Abby. You've been a wonderful host. This has
Thank you.
been a great panel. Appreciate you, Frank and David. John, great to meet you, and excited to see you at Worlds and Champions. You can find me on Twitter at Shay T Butler.
Cool. Frank.
Thank you to everyone at AOE for putting this together. This is the second year we've been a part of this event, and I think both the charitable cause as well as the workshops and panels that you do can provide a lot of people aspiring to get into the gaming industry and help them. And I think it's so important that we continue to level the industry up. So thank you for doing that. And thank you to John and Shay for taking the time on busy days for different reasons to be a part of this. You really, your knowledge is really helpful. You can find me basically everywhere at FFMiri, FFMIRHI. I post mostly on Twitter. I try to make sure that I am available for mentorship, especially of young people. If you have questions about my background, how I got in the industry, advice on how to approach challenges in career growth. I try to do this for as many people as possible. Please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I will find time to answer your questions. Yeah.
And John.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the audience, and thanks to you, Abby, and the rest of the crew. This is an amazing program, and really awesome panel. So really happy and really fun to be a part of it. You can find me at JohnJOHN at teamsecret.gg. That's my direct email address.
Again, thank you so much to all of our awesome panelists for spending time with us on this Saturday evening, and for Corsair with their continued partnership with AOE. It means a lot, and we're doing some good to put the power of play back in the world. So, a quick shout out to our sponsors that we've also been really thankful to have. Twitch Student. Twitch Student offers the means to grow an even larger audience, represent your university on Twitch, and gain skills and experience valuable to a future within gaming. Geek Therapeutics, the leader and gold standard in teaching professionals, parents, students, and others about geek therapy. So I'm
Thanks,
so,
guys.
so, so honored that that was our first day of broadcasting for Area of Effect. Huge shout out to our last panel, our esports marketing with Corsair. I just want to thank you all, everyone who is within this audience still, for joining us today and spending your Saturday with us here at Area Effect on Twitch. We are all still taking donations for our cause for this weekend, Gamers Outreach on Tiltify, where you can register for the chance to win some more awesome prizes. So see, you donate, you do something good, you also get something good in return. What a great concept. And I am very honored. My production team says I can say it. I am stoked to announce our total at the end of our first day, which our money raised is $1,300.65. So 1365. That's how you know I'm dyslexic. I almost said 13,000, but we're over 1,000, y'all. That's a big deal. We're almost close to halfway of our donation goal of $3,000, which is incredible, incredible, incredible. Thank you so much to everyone who has donated today or previously. You're doing some real good in this world. I also want to give a shout out to this amazing Twitch chat, our amazing moderators, Maddie and Sam. I saw y'all working. Amazing. My Angel, Stellany, our incredible team, production team behind the scenes. You got Donovan and Ryan. You got people doing a really cool stuff. Our incredible panelists today from so many ranges of different disciplines for sharing their knowledge with us today. Again, these amazing production team, we really are this making the magic happen. And of course, we've shouted them out all day. These amazing, cool partners. This would not be possible without them. So this stream is ending right now, but we're going to be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific Coast time for the second day of Area of Effect with my lovely, lovely co-host, Jade Valkyrie, who will be taking over hosting duties for me. I am one of your co-hosts, Abby Sherlock. You can find me at ABBY_Sherlock on most social media platforms. And I am so grateful for you having me here today. Thank you so much. And I will see you for Area of Effect 2021 tomorrow. Bye-bye.